So since my last video where I talked about the Secret Garden, the steampunk version from 2017, I've gone on a bit of a of a marathon with all the other versions. I made a mistake in my last video where I said that apart from the '93 version and the steampunk 2017 version and the newest 2020 version, that going further back there was three versions made by BBC, and that was it. And upon doing a bit further research, I discovered that's not entirely the case. That yes, BBC did do three versions between the 60s and 80s, whereas according to Wikipedia, the first one is lost to time, along with the very first silent movie they ever made from 1990, which is apparently completely lost. But the two other BBC series, the second one they did is allegedly missing three of its what is it? Three of its 8 episodes, I think. 6 or 7 or 8, something along those lines. And the 1973 version is then of course the one you can get on DVD, which I have right here with Sarah Hollis Andrews as Mary. This is the third series that BBC made, which we still have in its entirety. And I started going on my whole marathon Secret Garden spree. I started with this one because I had heard that it was the most faithful to the book, and of course, saying that, of course I couldn't delve into it without reading it. And as I have said before, I am not very much of a book reader. So what I did was listening to the audiobook instead, which I did this past weekend, where I had a long drive with my family to Germany anyway. I wasn't the one driving, my father was. And so I sat there on the back seat. He had the radio going, I had my audiobook going. You would think that was a bit distracting, but I didn't mind so much. The audiobook was the loudest to me, and then every now and then I heard a song in the radio where I then paused the audiobook and then used my phone to analyze what is this song. And I love doing that when I'm out on the road with him. Like, what is this song in the radio? I like that. I want to hear. I want to record it, or not record it, but analyze it. So anyway, I got done listening to the audiobook, narrated by Karen Savage, by the way. Apparently a very renowned audiobook reader, and she totally made the book come to life. Like, she was excellent. Really managed to read the book in a way where you felt you were there, and you really felt the magic of the garden and the setting in general, and Mary, Dickon, all of the characters, especially Dickon, because he talks with his Yorkshire accent, along with his older sister Martha. And Karen, I don't know what her backstory is, but she nailed. I have never heard Yorkshire before, or maybe I have, but then I don't remember. But she nailed their Yorkshire accent. You just wanted more of it, like keep speaking to me, keep speaking to me, like it was like crack cocaine. I say, having never tried that, but again, it's a figure of speech. So I listened to the audiobook. It took me 3 days. Didn't listen to it constantly. I listened a bit in the evening and a bit the next day, and so on. Great book. Would 100% recommend you either reading it or listening to it. Um, and not spoiling anything for those of you who haven't. Maybe some of you have only watched the movie. I don't. I feared what listening to the book, that I would become one of those, oh, the book was better types. And I was like, I liked the 93 movie, so I feared that listening to the book would ruin the movie for me, but it didn't. And not just because of nostalgia, but because there were some things that I did feel the 93 movie did better. And I'm gonna come back to that, because watching the BBC series, I agree that it sticks about 97% to the book. And when I say 97, what I mean is that it follows the story beat for beat for beat. Maybe some scenes are a bit replaced because it makes more sense in a narrative sense, like when Mary talks to Colin about the garden. You don't just see them sit in the bed and she talks. When she starts talking, you get a flashback to one of the times where she went about in the garden with Dickon. So they kind of you know use that to an effect. Um, I did feel that that Mary and Dickens' time alone together were a bit less than in the book. It felt like she was spending more time with Colin, because him him being in bed, and his hysteria, and Mary who breaches into his life and changes him for the better, seemed like it had more of a focus in the movie than her running around with Dickon and bringing the garden back to life. Like, again, you see them in the garden when she shows Dickon the garden for the first time, and then you see them bits and pieces here and there, but it's never really the focus. I feel, whereas in the book, see, I'm starting already now, in the book, um, maybe because of all of the inner thoughts and the descriptions and stuff, um, it felt like the garden and Mary and Dickon in the garden had more room to breathe in the story. But that said, it does as I was told, the series, the 1975 series, does is it is super super faithful to the book, and this is my point, almost to a fault, because I'm like, first of all, if the series, which is of course a visual media, unlike the book, which is just text, you have to create the images in your head yourself. If the series slash movie, because an abridged 1 hour and 50-minute movie was also made of the series, where they cut some of it down, because of course the series is 7 episodes of 30 minutes each. So the movie, of course, I haven't watched that yet, but you can do the math. Of course something is going to be missing, but either way, it sticks so close to the before that, sorry, I'm mumbling now. I was gonna say that if if the series is gonna stick that close to the book, then why not read the book instead? And that brings me to my second point, that the series, because it sticks as close to the book as it does, um, it kind of, you know that thing where in they say that you shouldn't, if you're trying to learn Japanese, and you try to learn Japanese by watching anime, you have to keep in mind that the way they talk in anime is not the way real Japanese people talk, and that I have learned goes for any storytelling. Like, in a book, they don't talk like they do in real life. I mean, I write books, and I'm fully aware that the way I make my characters act and talk in my books is nowhere near how real Danish people talk. But you make them talk that way in the book for dramatic effect, because it sounds so much grander when they speak that way. But in a movie that tries to replicate real life, it just doesn't work. So yes, the scenes are recreated one to one. Some of them rearranged, as I talked about before, but when you take most of their lines and make them exactly like in the book, like I can understand that iconic lines, like take for example in the gaming community, the new Resident Evil 4 remake, where the entire script has been rewritten, but there are few lines like when Leon goes, "Where's everyone going? Bingo." Everyone was like, that line has to be there because it's so iconic. Or when he fights Chief Mendes and goes, "Hasta luego." That that line again had to be there. But going from book to movie, if every line in the movie or series is the same as it was in the book, then it gets a sort of uncanny feeling, like these characters don't talk like real humans. They talk like it's a play. They talk like they have just been pulled out of a book. They don't talk like real people. And I will, don't get me wrong, I will commend the actors acting any time of the day, like whether it was Mary and the other kids, Deacon and Colin. I don't remember the actors' names. Sorry about that. I usually never do. I mean, I just stood with the DVD in my hand and read Sarah Hollis' name out loud, and I already forgot it. Um, so I mostly refer to them by their character names, just so you know. But whether it was Marin, Colin, Deacon, the servants, Martha, whatever, they all did a great job with what they had. They were great at remembering their lines, and I only caught 3.5 moments um where the kids, and I believe one time Martha, maybe 3 times throughout the whole series of 7 episodes, there was a bit of stumbling where you were like, why didn't they retake that instead of just letting the camera roll? But aside from that, everyone did phenomenally. And if this had been a theatrical play on a stage where it the way they talk is more like in a book, like, like, "Oh Romeo, how I love thee," or whatever. The way they talk on a stage was more like how they talk in this movie. It felt like, first of all, the way the kids talked I know it was a different time. It was 75, and every of course people talked differently back then compared to the language we used to today. Like if you try to read an English book from the 1800s, you can't understand half of it. Heck, I have trouble understanding Shakespeare. But I hope you get my point, that because the lines were taken almost one to one from book to movie, it felt stilted, it felt wooden, it felt fake, it felt uncanny. I mean, again, I sat there and I was like, I remember that line from the book. I remember that line from the book. But because I remembered those lines from the book, it felt like the actors were just reading up from the book instead of being their own three-dimensional characters, if you get what I mean. And that's where I have I haven't watched the '93 version in a while. That's gonna be last on my list to rewatch after I have watched all of the other versions. But that movie, it followed the story and recreated key points, but everything in not everything, but most things in between, it did its own thing, and that's, I mean, if you want a movie or a series that sticks 100% close to the book, and if you are the type who is like I don't want the movie to take any creative liberties. I want it to be exactly like the book. Like the new Harry Potter series that has been announced from HBO. Many people are like because oh the books were better because so many details were left out of the movie. I hope that the series really goes in and includes every single detail from the books. Where again I'm like, if you want every single detail from the book, just read the goddamn book. It has all of the details. um, but if you are the type who wants the visual interpretation to be as close to the book as possible, then this is a great watch. And I will say it's a great watch, even if I mean, if you are just a fan of The Secret Garden in general, I would 100% recommend you at least give this series a watch. Unlike the 2017 steampunk version that I reviewed last time, where I may have been a bit too harsh on that one. I ended up saying that I didn't recommend it at all unless you were morbidly curious. That wasn't really fair. Sure, the movie had its flaws, but it's it's an enjoyable experience that, unlike this series, alone by the fact that it goes full steampunk on your ass. Unlike this series, and unlike the 93, and let me try again. The 2017 version had its flaws, and the acting again felt a bit, like I said back then, it felt a bit high school play like instead of professional movie actors acting, but it still tried something different instead of just instead of just being a reenactment, word for word, beat for beat, scene for scene of the book. And again, if that's what you want, nothing wrong with that, but I just feel that you already have the book with all of the magical details and the great dialogue, and yeah, I really can't praise that book enough, except that minor spoiler alert, I really 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 preferred the 93 movie ending. I thought the book ended way too abruptly. Um, but what I what I'm getting at is that if you're gonna make a visual representation of a book in the form of either a movie or a TV show, then I don't think that you should go beat for 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 beat and just be 100% true to the source, because again, then I'll just go back to the source and read that instead. Why would I watch a movie where I have already experienced everything you have to offer? I already read the book. I already know what everyone is going to say, how they are going to do it, and where they are going to do what they are going to experience, and stuff like that. And in general, I mean, yes, they do everything beat for beat in this series, but things like when Mary first discovers the garden, and a couple of other scenes I already don't quite remember. There were some points where I was like, and again, I know this is an old series, it was made over 30 years ago. There were some scenes where I thought that a little close up here and a close up there, like when she turns the key for the first time and I'm in the secret garden, could have been a little more. There could have been a little more focus on that. Where in the book, that's what you get in the book. Francis, sorry if I mispronounced that. I only heard the name pronounced every time a new chapter was coming in the audiobook. But when she describes how the wind rushes through the garden hallways and brushes the overgrowth aside, and Mary then catches some of the plants in her hand because they have revealed something, and she she catches a glimpse of what she thinks is a door, and then she follows the door, finds the handle, finds the keyhole, takes the key, puts it in the keyhole, and then with a bit of effort and two hands required, she pushes the door open. Like how it's described in the book is so magical. In the series, sure, she she stares all wonderful on the door, like I found it, and then she looks to her sides, making sure no one has followed her, and then she slips in. Like, calm down, chill, girl. So, and that's my point. That's my point. Because the series strives so hard to be one to one the book, then I can't help compare it to the book. To the point where I become like, one of those. The book was better. Because if you're gonna be 100% one to one, like the source material, then the source material was better. But if you make something where you add your own creativity, if you make something new, something that stands out, if you make your own original take on this beloved story, like we do with many other IPs. I can't name any of on the top of my head, but how many classic stories do we not have that are still getting reinterpreted today, still getting new movie interpretations, video games sometimes, but where the story follows the same key points, but is told in a different way that makes it its own. And as much as I criticize the 2017 version for feeling more like a high school play, it did something new and original. You could recognize it as being the Secret Garden because it had the characters that you recognized, and it followed the same key points. But you can't compare it to the book in the same way because it goes and does its own thing. And that's what I want. I don't want, however great it is, and however much I praise everyone who contributed to this fine production, because it is a great series, it is. But as much as I commend it for everything it did, there is such a thing as staying too close to the source material. I feel something as there is something like staying close to the source material to a fault. Like, I believe I have also brought this up a couple of times, but the new Resident Evil movie, or the latest one, Welcome to Raccoon City, they promised that, unlike the W.S. Anderson movies, that they would this time we promised that we are gonna stay closer to the games, and they did too much. They did too much to the point where they threw Easter eggs at us, and recreated iconic set pieces and stuff like that, but the story was absolute trash. Not that this story is trash in any way. I'm just making a comparison that there is such a thing as staying too close to the source. And that's really my overall point. This was a great watch. I just got done binging it. It was a great watch. I will recommend anyone watching it, whether you are a fan of The Secret Garden, whether you just like films and series from the 70s, whether you are someone who likes, family friendly movies and series, and is curious. I'll recommend that you watch this. But personally, to me, I'd rather just read the book again, because of the two, since the series insists so heartily on being as close to the book as it does. I'm sorry, but the book was better. Next up, not next up. Next up, I'm gonna watch the 1987 movie. I haven't received that in the mail yet, but you can watch it on YouTube. And after that, I'm gonna watch the 1949 version, which is black and white and revolutionary for the time. They switch to color when they enter the garden to kind of enhance the garden's magic. After that, I'm gonna watch the 1994 animated feature, and then I'm gonna rewatch the 93 version, just to have it more recent in my mind. And despite it not having subtitles after that, I'm gonna watch the anime, the 1991 Japanese anime version, which, as I just said, I have found it on YouTube, but it is non-subtitled or unsubbed. So I'll just have to watch it and try to understand what is going on. That's what I had to say this time. Read the book or listened to it. Watched the series. I watched the series that had gotten the most praise for sticking to the book, and again, I agree that it sticks most to the book, but I feel that that's also its detriment, for all the reasons I just stated. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. I would love to hear either or, and for that matter, like I also ended the last video with, have you seen any of the movies? Have you watched any of the series? Did you even know there were this many interpretations of it in movie form? Share your comments and your thoughts below, and I'll thank you for watching. Thank you for watching, of course, and I'll see you later.